Share screen. Press play. There we are. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about talking to buyers about representation. And of course, there's so many scenarios and everything's always a little bit different. So, Debbie and I love to discuss, what situation you're in, what the buyer's thinking, what their goals are. Is it one house? Is it many? Do you know them off the internet? There's so it's hard to group all of this into, you could customize all of this to
Yep.
specifically how to tackle somebody in the aspect of going over buyer representation with them. Some people like, just understand and just here, just let me sign, let's go. And some people want the explanation. There's so many scenarios. So I love to go through those. I just love this, like hear more about, and I'm sure Debbie, you'd agree with this, is that sometimes the agents call us and say, how do I do this? I'm like, well, what are you in? Give
Yeah.
us some backstory, or how do I get this signed? Well, with a pen, or what do you mean, get it signed physically, or I mean, so if anybody knows, I say that that's one of my jokes. Like, how do I get this signed? Well, with a pen or electronically. Like, how do I convince them, or how do I explain it? So we'll jump right into this. So go ahead, Deb.
One of the first things that you want to do when you are talking to a buyer is get to know them. So if you don't know anything about that buyer and what their thought process is about this, then you're not going to know, first of all, which buyer's agency agreement to have them sign, or even how you're going to go about doing all of this with them. So take the time to find out what is going on with them, and then you will become a team. CTEAM, team. And here's your things, right? You want to start with finding out what their time frame is. You want to find out if they've purchased homes before, if maybe they're investors and they do lots of business, so they're going to have their own ideas of how things go if that's the case. Um, when they did their business before, did they have a buyer's agent involved in those deals? Is their ability to purchase the property ready and available? I mean, this is a huge one, you guys. I know that we've done a lot of business in the past where we didn't have a pre-approval or a proof of funds in our hand before we started working with a buyer, but you really need that now because
Mhm.
there's so many other things in play right now. You've got to know if that buyer is going to be able to do what we need them to do, right? Do you agree?
Oh, definitely. Yep. You gotta know the whole picture.
Yep. And what is their motivation? So, what is making it the most important thing when it comes to their home search? Is it going to be the area that they're in, or is it going to be the money part of it? So, why are they actually doing what they're doing? And getting to know this buyer a little bit is going to connect you with them as well. So, they're not going to seem so much like a stranger, and neither will you. And you're also going to be showing how much you care. Even if you really don't care about that person, you care about the transaction, right? So you want it to go through. So you need to take the time to find out all of these motivating things as far as the buyer goes.
Right. And this just going through all of this with every buyer that you start spending time with would save a lot of agents a lot of time.
Yeah.
The ones that go, I've been working with these people on and off for 6 months or longer, and they never bought, or they decided to go here, or didn't have under a buyer agreement. And that's one of the number one things agents get burnt out on, is all the time they spend on buyers. And if you go through this and make an assessment yourself if they're worth your time, not, I mean, they're all these people could be great people, but if you don't know all of this stuff and you're like, it doesn't add up to, I'm going to start investing my time. That's the most important thing, because so many times, and Debbie will agree, I'm sure, is that they just someone says, I want to go buy it, and then they jump right out and start
Yep.
spending time in research. Especially, I get agents that call us and go, oh my God, I got this someone who emailed or texted me interest and stuff, and I spent hours doing all this research and doing all stuff. I'm like, oh my God, why? You got to do all of this, or time is valuable. So
Yeah, and now they won't answer the phone. So find out what their motivation is first before you start putting in all the work, right? Um,
exactly.
so when we do get to this part, you want to be transparent. And part of the things is you want to use the resources that are available to you when you're talking to your buyer and finding out all of these motivation things, and also getting you prepared for this, the buyer's compensation, right? There is a really nice buyer's guide that is in Moxie Present. Use it, you guys, because it definitely helps you with your talking points and gets you to the point where you're talking about all the pieces of money, which is part of the buyer's compensation, is part of those pieces of money. Maybe we're going to have the seller pay for some of these pieces of money, and maybe you're going to pay for some of these pieces of money. So use your buyer's guide, be upfront about how you want to be compensated and how your commission is attached to the value that you provide. And if you're really scared about it, don't fall back on this is how much I get paid. Fall
Right.
back on this is how much the office is charging for a transaction. And if you use those words with the person, it doesn't seem so much like personal that they're paying you directly, because they're not. They're paying the office, right?
Right. Oh,
So,
definitely. Yeah. No, I remind agents of that too a lot too, is that remember this is the office charging because agents don't get to charge clients. The brokerage and broker does.
yeah,
You're representing the company, so use that if you want to.
yes, right.
You're like,
Fall
I get a
back on
part,
that.
you get a portion of that, but that's between, you and the company, not
Yes.
you and your client. So.
Yeah, you want to explain situations that could come up during the home buying process. You don't want to get into too much detail and scare the person away, but just different things, like I'll be there with your when you go do your home inspection, so that I'll help you decipher what that home inspector's saying. I'll be there and I can communicate with your lender if you need me to. Different things like that. Let them know that these are things that could happen. I'll negotiate with the seller if we need to get something fixed. Different things like that provide your value. You're here to help them get it to the closing table. You want to
Yep.
demonstrate how to help buyers avoid financial surprises. So again, falling back on those inspections, I really can't stress enough. I think that every buyer should get a general home inspection at the very least. Yes, it costs them a few $100s, but it is so worth it to know, because just walking through a house, you're not going to see all of those things in a 15-minute or a half hour
That's
tour.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's one of my big things. Thanks for bringing that up, the home inspection. You went through all of the stuff to see how motivated people are. That's one of the questions. Yes, I always suggest and highly recommend and semi require my buyers to have a home inspection. Just want to make sure you're upfront with that. So you'll get right away if these people are motivated financially, because they'll spend all your time. But when you explain, when you put an offer in, I'm going to, you can't require them, but highly suggest to them they have an inspection because it protects them, it protects you, it protects everybody. And when you have someone buying a house and can't invest in an inspection, how motivated are they financially to even go through with it? Because we have people, I mean, and we both have many stories of buyers, after a week or two want to back out of the deal
Yeah.
because they're thinking of all the money that they have to spend and if they want to do it and get nervous. So if before you even start looking, if they have no thought they have to start invest when they put an offer on a house, invest in explaining that to them. When you buy a house, you're going to be vesting some money, not just your down payment. There's closing costs. There's inspections you have to pay for. There's appraisal you have to pay for. If you go over all of this, and hopefully you have a lender that helps you with all of that too, of course. But you can see before you even go see the house,
Yep.
if they're financially ready to put their money where their mouth is and earnest money and stuff like that.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
Money where their mouth is. Absolutely.
Exactly, because they'll spend all the time, but when it's time to, give them the credit card and write the checks and forward the money, it's a whole different story. So, ready
Yep.
for the next slide?
Just one more
Okay,
point. You want
please.
to make sure that they understand that not all listings are handled the same in terms of compensation. So when you are talking to them about that, of course, we are going to say, yes, we're going to ask the seller to pay this for you. But not all sellers are savvy to that. I don't really see too many that are not paying anything. We're a year into this due system that we're doing right now. You have a few every once in a while that don't want to pay anything, but they've always been there anyway. So things
Right.
are pretty much normal, guys. So you just really need to just do it. Just do your
Yeah,
job
no.
because everything is pretty much normal,
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
the good news is what I would say is that a majority of a large percentage of agents, like if you took percentages, most of them are just buyers agents because it's just harder to get listings or listings are a little bit more picky. They do a little more research. They interview agents. So a smaller percentage of agents have the listings. So those agents or majority of the agents, if they've done have do listings often, not one that just gets a listing every now and then, like every once in a while fall across a listing, but the agents that are always listing properties consistently have learned that that's what I've seen, Deb, over the last year. They've learned that buyers are coming in with these and asking, so they're prepping their sellers that, hey, we're gonna have so it was a little rough when this change first started, August last year, but now I think it's pretty much kind of, I don't know, say it's not back to normal, it's just back to the listing agents are explaining to sellers at time of listing. Well, at least we tell our right, we tell our
Yeah.
agent, tell your sellers at time of listing, we don't know what the buyers are going to be asking for. They might ask for nothing, they ask for something, might be 1%, nothing, 3%, could be 4%, who knows? But just be open for that when we're ready. And I think a lot of agents, listing agents are doing that and it's helping everybody out. So again, but you're still going to come across occasionally a seller that just refuses or just adamant they don't want to. But again, they can't stop the offer from coming in. But again, there's a whole nother topic. I don't want to keep it going down that
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that time. That keep going forever with that one. But go ahead.
So questions the buyer may ask you. And so I'm going to put you on the spot. Tony, you're going to answer these
Sure.
questions. So no agents are asking me to sign a buyer's agreement. How would you answer that to the buyer?
Sure. Well, they all should because it's an Ohio law. And I'd be kind of concerned if they're not telling you about it now or going to ask you for to do it last minute, or backdate something. So again, you just want a fine line of just saying no, that they're doing something wrong, but this is required. So why, when agent wouldn't bring this up or bring it up later, it would concern me. So say, you got to get your script together ready for that.
Right.
So
But it is a requirement in Ohio. So all agents should be asking for that as the perfect example because that's the truth.
sure.
It is required. We have to have it
Hmm.
before you show the home, you guys,
Right.
before you show the home.
Right. It's a licensed law now. Not, I mean,
Yeah.
when we first started this, it wasn't until like October last year. So in August, it was just a rule as realtors, and now it's part of our license law. So if you get caught showing houses without one, you're gonna could get in trouble.
Right. I thought the sellers pay your fees.
Well, legally, and is that all commission is negotiable. Buyer could pay, seller could pay. It could be a combination of both. You could have your uncle pay. It doesn't matter. Someone has to pay it, but we all have to be in an agreement of who that is between the buyer and the seller and the agents to that. But yes, typically most sellers pay the fees, when at closing, but we could negotiate that or whatever is best for you.
When we find our dream home, we're going to go directly to the seller to get a break on the commission, Tony.
I love this one.
Me
Well,
too.
you never know. The thing of it is that, and I explain this to buyers, is that sometimes I suggest our agents show them our listing agreement. Well, this is what happens in our listing agreement. So if you decide to sell your house with us, give me up front, and just so you have it on there. So it's nothing confidential. We could share our documents and say, listen, here we have our sellers pay. X percent, whatever one you decide to show them, because you as an agent are welcome to be free with your commission. But if you use like something we recommend, maybe 3 or 4% on the again, this is just an example, like
Yeah.
3 or 4% to the seller for you in our company. And then if an unrepresented buyer comes in, there's another charge to the seller that for the extra work and working both sides and all the liability and everything that goes along with it. So I explained to a buyer, this is what happens when you see possibly one of our listings and one of our agents. Other companies have the same thing, but you don't get to see this. You have no idea what that seller's paying and if that agent's charging their seller more money because you don't have an agent. So it's very possible. We can't guarantee they're not, because some companies might, but there's a very good possibility that you are not getting it cheaper. You're not saving commission. It's just that listing agents now charging the seller more than theirs. So at least, and that's you will never get to see and you will never know. You could ask, they don't have to tell you. But at least when you have your own buyer's agent, you're going to know exactly what you're paying your buyer's agent for representation and what the seller's paying for those too, if the seller decides to pay. So,
Yes. And you're going to have representation. If you go
exactly.
directly to the seller,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have no representation, but the
Yeah.
money's probably going to be the same on
Yeah.
your side, right? So you're
Right.
not getting a break.
Right, exactly. There's still some buyers out there that feel that way, but again, just kind of like what I was just saying before, I think it's finally the system or the change has worked its way enough where more and more buyers are being educated from listing agents and or buyers agents, like I just said, and there's not as many buyers agents just cutting out their representation, thinking they're going to get a break, but not.
Which is the next one over. It says we
Exactly.
decided to save on buyer's commission and represent ourselves. Same thing
Exactly.
applies.
Same thing applies is that you may be, again, I explained to this is that another thing you could say, again, you got to get comfortable with how you say it, is explain to buyers is that, so do you really believe that the buyer, the list seller's agent, the listing agent that represent them is going to do all of the work I would be doing for you for free?
Yeah.
Why would they do that? If they had two offers and they're making the same example, you might miss out on a deal. Just example of possibility. If I'm a listing agent and I'm charging my seller some amount and I don't make any more money with unrepresented buyer or one that has an agent, I make the same amount of money. I get two offers that are identical, one with an unrepresented buyer that I have to do all the work for, and one that comes in with an agent that's going to do all of the work on the buyer side and on that. Which one do you think I'm going to promote?
Right.
So you might be putting yourself at a disadvantage going to a seller without an agent. Because also, as a listing agent, my opinion, I say this as a broker on that, what I would tell, example, if I ever sold my house, there's absolutely no way I'm going to sell my house to a buyer that's unrepresented. I want them to have representation. It protects me as a seller. I know they can't come back at me or my agent that we didn't represent them or we didn't say something or kept something from them. I'm going to require part of my, as a seller, require them to have representation. A seller can do that. It's just like anything, like pay closing costs, good this, go get representation. You don't have to pay for it. Go find someone to represent you because I don't
Yeah.
want my agent doing all that extra work and I don't want my agent possibly, getting confused with who represents who. So if you could take those things, but I will go, Debbie and I'll go over them more and more with you. Example of, what things could happen and explain to your buyer that that might not look good to the buyer, the seller and the seller's agent when you're unrepresented.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. And these are just like the top 5 ones. There's so many different questions and ways to answer them and stuff, but this is an exercise to get you guys start thinking about things, right? And asking questions to us ahead of time so that you are prepared for your buyer's conversations. Kind of like what you just said, I had that same conversation with my dad when we were in Florida when all of this stuff happened last March. We were driving down to Key West and he's throwing things at me in the car because we're driving for an hour, right? And I'm answering them just like you did. And I'm like, but Dad, think about it this way. If you wanted to do this, that, and the other, would you be more comfortable with this or would you be more comfortable with that? You have to remember he was an agent years ago, right? So his mind is thinking as a seller and as a buyer now and not as a real estate agent. I said, go back to the way that you used to think and then answer the question and bring it back to me. And the same things would happen as what you exactly said. Well, I would want them to have representation. And I'm like, okay, so you just answered your own question, so
Right.
sometimes you have to throw it back that way. The last one I have on here is what if I don't have the money to pay you along with the closing costs, inspections, and down payment money?
Right. So basically, it's just I use the example if you when you talk to have a good relationship with a lender as an agent and your buyer and explain to this is what the funds they have and all of this. There's many, many, many times we're not even talking about buyers, agents, commission, but times that people are pre-approved and approved to get a loan, but they need seller concessions towards the closing costs. They don't have enough money or funds to have their own closing costs. So lenders are giving out those pre-approval saying, hey, but they need 3% for closing costs. They can't buy a house without that. And sometimes I talk to lenders all the time like this. The number one thing that a lot of agents miss, they don't hear that and they think that it's still optional. They go, no, it's not just they would like to have closing costs paid by the seller. They need that credit. Same with buyer's agent's commission. So when you have a good relationship with the lender saying they don't have the funds, it's different if they don't want to pay. But yes, if we find a house and you don't have the funds for your closing costs, we're asking the seller to pay, 3% for your closing costs, and we're asking them to pay this, and they won't give you all of that at a certain price, then we might have to move to another house. It's very simple. It's all of those things. Now, you as an agent can decide if you want to help them out and lower it. I mean, we have agents that do that. Maybe because they showed them one house or 10 houses and it doesn't much time and it's a $600,000 house or whatever. So you get to decide, but you at least, have the leverage to decide if you want to come down and help them out. So,
Yeah, that's a good point, all of that. The other thing that I also tell agents when I'm working with them one-on-one is don't max out your buyer when you're looking at houses. You know, when you talk to that lender and you find out what their buying power is, if it's not so great, you're looking under that number so that you can build it in and get to that number. And then there's that cushion where they're not going to be that stressed about it. If you have to ask the seller for closing cost help, or if they really need you to ask the seller to pay their fee as a condition of this offer, then make sure you're not maxed out to begin with, right?
yeah, exactly.
Look underneath that price so that you can build up to that number.
Exactly. No, that's great. So yeah, if you have a house that's their max is buying a house that's 250,000 and you're maxing that out, there's nowhere for them if that's 100% the maximum purchase price the lender said, then you can't, the sellers can't even give you the option of raising the purchase price up a little bit to cover the closing costs or cover the concessions towards buyer agent commission and things like that. So yeah, don't max it out. Start looking a little bit lower. So there's that cushion there
Yeah.
of things. So it can go into a house, say it's multiple offers and the house is 200 and $30,000 list price and people are going over ask price. You go up to 240, 245 because they're still under the minimum maximum, the lender said, and get the concessions. And also you
Yeah.
can call to the listing agent, say, hey, I got a buyer. They're going to need 3% for closing costs. Is your seller open to paying closing costs you can get their mindset before you do all of the work on that. So,
Yeah, for sure. Down at the bottom, I have when answering the agent should always consider what's in it for the buyer, which is back to what we were just talking about. If you're thinking ahead of time about where your numbers are and stuff, then you're going to be a benefit to that buyer, and you're going to be the hero when they get their offer accepted, and they're going to refer you to others because you worked really hard to get them what they wanted in their price point,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
what they can afford.
Yeah, one other thing, just to go back about signing a buyer's agreement. Sometimes I use the something like this with a buyer, is that this buyer agreement doesn't guarantee, it doesn't force you to pay me anything. I work for free, so to say. I'm investing my skills to help you find a house. You only have to make sure I get paid if you find a house and buy it. So you could find 20 houses over the next month and I write 20 offers that never get accepted, you owe me nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing, zero. I could keep working and working and working. So I'm investing my time in you, but don't worry. You don't ever, this is not saying I'm going to send you a bill someday, but when you find that house that you want to buy and it gets accepted and all terms are good with you and the seller, then we get paid. We
Yeah.
don't get paid until you're happy. It's 100% satisfaction. Really, it is. Because if they're not satisfied, you don't buy the house.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. If you're not satisfied, so I think some buyers sometimes feel like they're signing this and they're going to owe you a commission no matter what. I'm like, no, not until you find the house you want to, and all everything about the price and the terms and the condition and the inspections, it's totally satisfactory to you before until you close on the house, then we get paid. Until
Yep.
it's your house, nothing, not 1 cent goes to me. So it's again making them feel that this is just an agreement that when you're totally happy with a house you want to purchase, then you get compensated. So, all
Yep.
right, next
For
one.
sure. That we can get into a lot more of those things. Uh, if you want to go one-on-one with us, we'd be happy to tell you about that. Also, want to make sure that you guys remember to fill out your forms correctly. You always want to have the max amount of money on your buyer's agency agreement. You can always accept less. You cannot accept more. We're still seeing a lot of them that have zero, have 1%, have nothing in the field because, well, the buyer's not paying it, the seller is. That's not how the documents are written. You need to read them because it says no matter who's paying it, this is how much we are charging for our services. You can always accept less. You cannot accept more. And if you
Yep.
want more clarity on that, please feel free to reach out. Okay.
Yep. And one other thing I'll add is that another thing I say is that this is just an agreement of you and the buyer agreeing of what you're compensated by whoever.
Yeah.
So you and the buyer have an agreement, like how much money, you decide to make. And it's negotiable, but up until you sign
Yeah.
it. So, all right, go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is something that you can post on your social media. This I took right from one of the newsletters that they have in Moxie Engage. So you can use bits and pieces of the things in Engage. You don't have to send out the whole newsletter and stuff. And this just reminds people about focusing on the different things that are now and up to date in in our industry, right? So giving them little informational things on the right, like that says, according to a recent study from the National Association of Realtors Home Builders, home buyers are looking for smaller homes. So it does tell them different things of what buyers are actually looking for now. They also have all these different things out there about what the decor should look like. So the modernization of homes and things. And just so you know, the grays are out now and they're back to browns again. So always watch your trends so that
Mhm.
you can be up and especially when you're talking to sellers and what they want to do with their house to get the most bang for their buck. It's not the grays anymore. That those are out. Now they want everything in these kind of tones, right? Which has
Yep.
always been my tone. So this is right along my alley. But some people like the grays and the whites and the blacks and stuff.
Right.
But that was so yesterday, right?
Right. Exactly.
Things to remember is you want to make sure that you ask the buyer to keep you informed when they're doing different things. So when they decide to push their time frame out or they want to stop the search, just remind them to let you know what's going on. If they see a for sale by owner, don't contact them. Give the information to you so that you can contact them. If they want to go to an open house and you're not available to go with them, that's totally fine. Make sure they're taking your card and they present your card at that time so that the other agents know they have representation. If they're going to a new home development, this is a big one, you guys, because a lot of the times this is happening right now, is buyers are going to new construction builds and they're talking to those salespeople on their own without you. Make
Mhm.
sure that they present your card so that you can get involved in the transaction. Okay, because
Right,
if
and then
they
that's
already make the deal and they didn't tell them that they had representation and they don't know anything about you, you're not going to get paid for that. And you would not be advising them at that point because you're not going to be involved. Okay.
exactly. But also, yeah, that's exactly the conversation you have with people is that, especially when you have a buyer and they sign an agreement, the buyer agreement, and you explain we're going to have the seller pay. But if they're talking to a home builder before they get involved, they got to ask, are you paying agents or not? Because if not, it could turn into that's a situation where you could require, you would have to pay everything to your company.
Yeah.
So, so just let them know because sometimes you know, these builders, they some of them do, some of them don't. You don't know, and I know a lot of them do now because their buyers are coming in saying, "I already signed an agreement with my buyer's agent, and I'm required to pay them, but I want the seller to pay." So you could have that conversation with a builder. I think more and more builders are paying now when a buyer comes to them saying they already have an agreement, and but it's up front. They let them know.
Yeah. Let the buyer know that you're giving them the best professional help, have their best interest in mind, and we'll work together with them to find the right home. So just that reassurance in there.
Yep.
Okay. This is an example of the newsletter that we actually have in Century 21's Moxie Engage. I just took a little snippet out of it so that you can see what it looks like. Um, Add your sphere to Moxie Engage and send them a newsletter. It's not going to hurt you just to send people a newsletter. You
Right,
might even get some business out of it, right?
right. It's easy. And more CE.
Yes, we did get another one. It is Core Law with Mike on August 16th. I remember adding that one. I do have that one for, oh, that's today. Never mind. You can't do that one.
Right. Is that today?
Yeah, the Stephen McCoy and Todd Book from the Ohio Board of Realtors. This is
Yeah.
one of their classes that they do, giving legal and industry updates. They have several of them for this month. There's another one at the end of the month on the 29th, I think, too. There's a couple that are in person, and then there's one, a virtual one on the 29th for them. They're really good talkers. They're the legal team for the Ohio Board of Realtors, and they tell you everything that is going on. I'll be going to that 29th one because I like to listen to everything these two guys say. They're always in the know and they know everything. And we do have Ann Pettit, who used to be the superintendent for the Division of Real Estate. She was also on our MLS Now board. She is doing a lot of advocating and trying to get a lot of legislation passed for working with wholesalers. So y'all stay tuned for that because there's been some recent developments and they're trying to figure out ways to try and streamline this process so it's not so crazy with the wholesalers and stuff.
That's
So as
good.
soon as we find out, we will let you know.
That's great. So
Yeah.
that's it for today. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, reach out to us. Go get on our calendar if you like. Talk to Tony with the number two Tony.net or talk the number two Deb.net and just let us know if you need anything and we'd love to talk about it. So have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.